Let's look at what it meant to make photography intentionally as an art form at the turn of the century, in the later part of the 19th century and getting to the early part of the 20th century. We're looking now at a movement that was called pictorialism. So, this is a period of time when popular photography is becoming widespread, and pictorialism is a movement that pushes in the opposite direction. In pictorialism, you see a deliberate scholarly pursuit of photography as a fine art form, and that's intended to be easily distinguishable from the popular vernacular uses of the medium that are coming around at that time. Naturalistic is a term that's used to specifically describe the beginnings of pictorialism. Naturalism in photography at that time refers to a specific visual style that uses differential focus following a scientific understanding of human optics. In fine art photography in the 1880s and 1890s, it's characterized by clubs, by organizations that have names and associations and membership listings and things. The Linked Ring was a really important pictorialist photography club, the most elite of the photography groups in the 1890s. So, a key figure from this time is Peter Henry Emerson. This is the photograph Rowing Home the Scoof Stuff from 1886. So, it's referring to what this man is doing in the rowboat. He's taking reeds, marsh reeds, and they're piled up on the little rowboat, and he's taking them back. They're going to be used for a kind of fuel. It's like peat. So in the photograph, you see this is as a demonstration of this differential focus strategy, where what's close to our vantage point as viewers is in sharp focus, and what's distant is in soft focus. So while this is something that we take for granted these days as a strategy in photography, it was new at this time, and it's intentionally used to mimic the effects of the eye, our optical ability to focus closely on what's close to us and the further things away from us being out of focus. So this is something that the lenses are being used to do, and the printing style is used to enhance. Notice that this is a platinum print. This method of printmaking gives a very soft black, so the deepest blacks that you see in a platinum print aren't going to be super dark, but they do keep a very sharp range of detail. Okay, it's kind of softer in its tonal range, but the detail is very precise, except where they don't want it to be. Okay, because you can see that what's distant is in soft focus. That's intentional. What's close to us is in sharp focus, and the detail there is very clearly rendered. So it's a very delicate printing process that's capable of achieving very fine detail. And because it uses actual platinum, it's a very expensive process to do. So platinum prints are one method of fine printing in pictorialism. Gum bichromate is another printing method that creates painterly effects with much hand manipulation in the printing process. Platinum prints use watercolor paper. Photogravures are another method of printing that we see at this time. This is an industrial process, not done by the photographers themselves, but by printers. It uses metal plates to reproduce photographs that have already been printed, and it's a typical method for printing photographs for camera club publications. This self-portrait by Edward Steichen is in the gum bichromate process, and you can see some of the scratches that were typical of that process. The gum bichromate prints tend to look more like a painting or even like a charcoal drawing than like a photograph, so it's really to emphasize how it is handmade. This photograph by Clarence White reflects the qualities of pictorialist photography to be composed in ways that are like paintings and incorporate symbols like the mirror and the window that people associate with the practice of photography. The subject material that they used in the photographs in pictorialism was often very close to what people were enjoying in painting. For example, this is Robert Demachy's Behind the Scenes, a scene of young ballet dancers. And this was a popular theme for painting at this time. So Degas was an impressionist painter who was considered extremely modern at his time. And you can see his compositional strategy with this kind of painting uses a lot of asymmetry, open space in the middle. There's movement that is sort of captured in the middle of a gesture or an action. And there's action and figures that are cropped off at the edges of the painting. This is an approach to painting that is strongly influenced by what photography is doing in the world at that time. So you see painting and photography influencing one another. This is Frederick Evans' The Sea of Steps, a platinum print, and you can see the repeated elements really structure this painting using a lot of movement and asymmetry. The Photo-Secession was a very important subgroup of the pictorialist that comes about in the later part of the 19th century. It begins with a manifesto to redefine the medium in terms of what is truly modern, to pursue what is truly modern, and to use photography as an independent art form, and is characterized by the pictorialist style. The Photo-Secession invites photographers. You don't get to apply to the Photo-Secession. They invite you, they pick you. And they included people from Europe, they included British photographers and American photographers, and several members of the Photo-Secession were women. One of the leading photo-secessionist photographers was Gertrude Casimir. This is typical of her approach to photography. So you see a sort of softness to this picture that is typical of the platinum printing process. So the blacks are not super deep, but they include fine detail both in the darkest areas and in the lightest areas. There's a softness to the effect, and there's a very gentle approach to the composition. Gertrude Casimir's photographs often had these sort of themes and feelings, the moods that came from traditions in painting. She embraced the connections between mothers and children in a lot of her photographs, and a lot of her photographs were actually commissioned originally as portraits. But then the photographs were then sort of also used as art photographs outside of their original commission. In Annie Brigman's photographs, you see dancers typically posing nude with their gestures and movements integrating with the landscape. So they're bringing landscape elements together with these abstract elements, often including a sphere. And for Annie Brigman, that sphere looked like a bubble, and that for her represented photography and its capability to visually reflect and capture what's going on around it, and to sort of capture transient moments. The way that a bubble disappears after just a moment, this bubble reminds us of how time is fleeting, but the photograph can capture it. As the Photo-Secession moves on into the 20th century, you see more and more abstract elements come into their approach to photography. So this one's from 1912. It's photographed looking downwards from a New York skyscraper. So a really bold and dramatic approach to composing the photograph. Now, this brings us to Alfred Stieglitz, the most significant force in American photography during this period. He was the founder and director of the Photo-Secession, a visionary and bold thinker about photography. The direction of the Photo-Secession led to his publication of camera work from 1902 to 1917. Camera work was a rarefied publication. It was expensive. They had very fine prints and it had very low circulation, but it was very important and influential in terms of how people thought about fine art photography. And over the course of its publication, it saw a major transition from the soft pictorialist style at the beginning to, at the end, an embrace of straight photography that was sharper, more direct, and eventually embraced abstraction.